He stood in the park like any other teenager, laughing, boasting, acting as if he owned the world. His confidence was unmatched, his arrogance undeniable. To his friends, he was fearless, untouchable. But beneath that bravado lurked something darker. When a stray golden retriever approached, wagging its tail with innocent trust, he saw not a creature in need, but an opportunity to prove his dominance. With a smirk, he toyed with the dog, taunting it, testing how far he could push. His friends laughed, encouraging him. To them, it was just harmless fun, but not everyone was amused. Unbeknownst to him, a figure watched from a distance, silent, unseen, unwavering. Someone who had witnessed cruelty before and refused to let it go unchecked. Someone who understood that power wasn't about hurting the weak, but about standing up for them. And when the truth came to light, when the boy finally realized who had been watching, the consequences weren't just unexpected, they were life-changing. But before we dive into this powerful story, tell us, where are you watching from? Share in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow we'll bring you another story that will move you even more. The sun was setting over the small coastal town of Brighton Bay, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The salty breeze carried the distant cries of seagulls, mingling with the sound of children laughing in the park near the boardwalk. Among them was Ryan, a 14-year-old boy with sharp blue eyes and an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Being the son of a successful businessman, Ryan had always felt superior to those around him, especially his peers. That evening, as Ryan and his friends gathered near an old wooden pier, an unexpected visitor arrived, a scruffy golden retriever with a worn-out collar. The dog, Buddy, wagged his tail eagerly, approaching the group with trusting eyes. Some of the boys found it amusing, chuckling at the dog's persistence. "Looks like you've got yourself a new pet, Ryan," one of them teased. Ryan sneered. "Get lost, mutt. I don't need some filthy stray following me around." Unfazed, Buddy took another step forward, his tail still wagging. That's when Ryan picked up a stick and smirked. "Wanna play fetch? Let's see how far you can run." But what Ryan didn't know was that someone was watching, and they wouldn't let this cruelty go unpunished. Buddy's tail wagged enthusiastically as Ryan raised the stick, his eyes filled with naive trust. With a smirk, Ryan hurled it far down the empty beach, expecting the dog to chase it blindly. And Buddy did, his paws kicking up sand as he sprinted after it, ears flopping with excitement. Ryan's friends laughed. "He actually fell for it. You gonna keep him now, Ryan?" one of them joked. Ryan rolled his eyes. "No way, let's see how much this mutt can take." Buddy returned, dropping the stick at Ryan's feet, panting happily. But instead of throwing it again, Ryan waved it just out of reach, taunting the dog. Buddy jumped playfully, thinking it was still part of the game. That's when Ryan's smile twisted into something cruel. He swung the stick, not to play but to strike. A sharp crack filled the air as the stick hit Buddy's side. The dog let out a startled yelp and stumbled back, his ears flattening against his head. He didn't understand. Just moments ago, they were playing. Why had the boy hurt him? Laughter erupted from Ryan's friends, but a few of them hesitated. "Dude, that was kinda messed up," one mumbled. Ryan, sensing the shift in the mood, scoffed and shrugged. "Relax, it's just a dog. He'll get over it." But Buddy didn't run. Even after being hit, he stayed, his big brown eyes searching Ryan's face for kindness, for an explanation. That only irritated Ryan more. "Why are you still here?" he snapped. shoving the dog with his foot. Buddy stumbled back, his tail now tucked between his legs. He turned to leave, limping slightly, but Ryan wasn't done. With a surge of frustration, he kicked again, this time harder. A piercing yelp shattered the air. The laughter died instantly. Even Ryan's closest friends shifted uncomfortably. One of them muttered, "Dude, that was too much." Before Ryan could brush it off, a deep, firm voice cut through the silence. "Is that how you prove you're strong?" Ryan's body stiffened. He turned sharply toward the voice. Standing at the edge of the park, just beyond the dim glow of the streetlights, was a man. He was tall, his broad shoulders casting a long shadow across the sand. His expression was unreadable, but the intensity in his gaze sent a shiver down Ryan's spine. The man took a slow step forward. The way he moved, calm, deliberate, made it clear he wasn't just some random passerby. He had seen everything, and he wasn't about to let it slide. Ryan swallowed hard, trying to maintain his bravado. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. The man stepped fully into the light. His sharp jawline, piercing eyes, and steady posture exuded an aura of authority. Ryan's stomach tightened, but he quickly masked it with an arrogant smirk. "What's it to you, old man?" he scoffed, folding his arms. His friends, sensing tension, exchanged uneasy glances but remained silent. The man, now standing just a few feet away, didn't flinch at Ryan's bravado. His sharp blue eyes locked onto the boys, unwavering. His voice was steady, controlled. "I watched everything, and I wonder, does it make you feel powerful, hurting something that can't fight back?" Ryan opened his mouth for a snarky reply, but something in the man's expression made him hesitate. It wasn't anger, it was disappointment. Buddy, still trembling, had limped behind the man, sensing safety. The contrast was striking. Where Ryan had been met with trust and loyalty, the man had earned quiet devotion in mere moments. One of Ryan's friends cleared his throat nervously. "Come on, Ryan, let's just go." But Ryan, feeling the weight of his pride, squared his shoulders. "Mind your own business," he snapped. "It's just a dog. What do you care?" The man's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Because kindness or cruelty defines who we are, and right now, you're showing the world exactly what kind of person you are. The words hit deeper than Ryan expected, and a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. But before he could respond, another voice, this one trembling, broke the tension. "Buddy." Everyone turned. An elderly man stood at the edge of the sidewalk, his frail frame silhouetted by the street lamp. His voice wavered as he took a shaky step forward. "Buddy, is that you?" The golden retriever lifted his head at the sound, his tail giving a hesitant wag. Ryan frowned, watching as the man, dressed in an old flannel shirt, hurried forward with as much speed as his aging body allowed. He knelt, arms outstretched, and Buddy, despite his limp, whined with joy before rushing into his embrace. Tears welled in the old man's eyes as he cradled the dog's face. "I thought I lost you, boy. Where have you been?" Ryan's chest tightened. He hadn't considered that the dog belonged to someone. The man, the one who had confronted him, turned back to Ryan. "Meet Walter. Buddy isn't just some dog. He's Walter's only family." The old man looked up confused. Who hurt him?" His fingers gently brushed over the bruised spot on Buddy's side. "Who did this?" Ryan's mouth went dry. His friends had already stepped away, distancing themselves from him. The man didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence wavering. For the first time, he wasn't sure what to say. Ryan's throat felt dry. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, glancing at his friends, none of whom were standing beside him anymore. They were lingering at a distance, avoiding his gaze. Walter, still kneeling, stroked Buddy's fur with trembling hands, his eyes glassy with emotion. "Who did this to you, boy?" he whispered. Buddy leaned into him as if offering silent reassurance. Ryan swallowed hard. He hadn't expected things to turn out like this. It was supposed to be a joke, just something to entertain his friends. But now, watching this frail old man cradle his injured dog, it didn't seem funny anymore. The man, the one who had confronted him, finally spoke. His voice was calm but firm. "Walter, Buddy was wandering near the park. These kids found him." He paused, letting the words settle before adding, "But not all of them were kind." Walter's gaze lifted, his tired eyes locking onto Ryan's. "You?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. There was no anger, just quiet disappointment. Ryan hesitated. His instinct was to deny, to brush it off. But standing there, under the weight of Walter's gaze, he couldn't force the words out. The man, Daniel, as Walter finally addressed him, crossed his arms. "Kindness isn't about what you say. It's about what you do. And tonight, Ryan, you chose cruelty." Ryan clenched his fists. He hated the way they were looking at him, not with rage, but with something worse. Expectation. Like they were waiting for him to do the right thing. Walter slowly stood up, wincing as he did. "You know," he said softly, "Buddy saved my life once." Ryan blinked. "What?" Walter gave a weak chuckle. "Few years ago, I had a bad fall in my backyard. No one around, couldn't move. Thought I was done for. But Buddy, he stayed by my side, barking his head off till a neighbor heard and called for help. He patted Buddy's head. He never left me, not for a second." Ryan looked down at the retriever, now sitting patiently beside Walter, despite the pain he was in. A dog that had saved a life. A dog that had trusted him. And what had Ryan done? The guilt hit him like a tidal wave. Ryan exhaled sharply, shoving his hands into his pockets. His chest felt tight, like something was pushing against it from the inside. Finally, he muttered, I didn't think." Daniel cut him off. "You didn't think, period." Ryan flinched, but Daniel wasn't done. "The question is, what are you going to do about it now?" Ryan's heart pounded. He had a choice to make. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't know what to do. Ryan looked at Buddy, then at Walter. The dog, despite his pain, still wagged his tail faintly, as if he had already forgiven him. Walter's wrinkled face held no anger, just sadness, the kind that made Ryan's stomach twist. Daniel's voice cut through the silence. "You have a choice, Ryan. Walk away like nothing happened, or do something to make it right." Ryan hesitated. His usual response would be to shrug it off, crack a joke, and move on. But this time, the weight in his chest wouldn't let him. The guilt, the shame, it was pressing down on him, harder than any punishment his father could ever give. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. What can I do?" His voice was quieter now, almost uncertain. Walter, surprised, exchanged a glance with Daniel before turning back to Ryan. "Buddy got out because my gate's busted," the old man explained. "My hands ain't as steady as they used to be, and I haven't been able to fix it." He gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe you could help?" Ryan blinked. Fix a gate? Manual labor? He'd never done anything like that before, but something in Walter's voice, something hopeful, kept him from immediately refusing. Daniel clapped him on the shoulder, firm but not aggressive. Good, because you're starting now. Ryan barely had time to protest before Daniel led him to Walter's backyard. The fence was old, the wooden panels worn from years of sea air and wind. The gate hung loosely on one hinge, the latch barely holding it closed. Daniel handed him a tool set. Ever used one of these before? Ryan shook his head. Daniel smirked. Then you're about to learn. For the next hour, Ryan fumbled with screws, wrestled with a rusty hinge, and tried not to look completely useless as Daniel instructed him. Walter sat nearby with Buddy, occasionally offering quiet advice or stories about the dog's antics. At first, Ryan struggled. His hands were more used to holding a phone than a wrench, but gradually he got the hang of it. And as he worked, something unexpected happened. He started to care, not just about fixing the gate, but about what it meant. By the time they finished, the latch clicked securely into place, the gate swinging smoothly. Walter smiled warmly. That's the best this thing's worked in years. Ryan stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. It wasn't perfect, but it was something, a start. Daniel crossed his arms, studying him. You're coming back tomorrow, Ryan frowned. For what? Daniel nodded toward Buddy. The damage you did isn't fixed in one night. You've got more work to do. Ryan hesitated, looking at Buddy. The dog looked up at him with quiet expectation, still trusting him despite everything. For the first time, Ryan didn't resist. He simply nodded. Yeah, I'll come back. The next afternoon, Ryan found himself walking back to Walter's house, a strange sense of nervousness creeping into his chest. He wasn't sure why he had agreed to come back. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the way Buddy had looked at him, not with fear, but with trust, as if believing Ryan could be better. Walter greeted him at the porch with a warm but knowing smile. Didn't think I'd see you again, son, Ryan shrugged. Yeah, well, I said I'd come back. Daniel was already in the backyard, rolling up his sleeves. Good, because today you're gonna do something useful. Ryan frowned. Didn't I already fix the gate? Daniel smirked. You fixed the gate, but fixing yourself? That takes a little longer. He gestured to a pile of old wooden planks and a bag of cement. We're reinforcing the fence today. Walter and Buddy need to be safe. Ryan groaned but didn't argue. As the sun climbed higher, he worked beside Daniel, hammering nails, mixing cement, and learning things he'd never thought twice about before. Walter sat nearby, telling stories about Buddy, how he had been a rescue dog, how he had been by Walter's side through the hardest times of his life. The more Ryan listened, the more something inside him shifted. This wasn't just some stray dog. This was Buddy, Walter's family. At one point, Ryan wiped the sweat from his forehead and glanced at Buddy, who was lounging in the shade, still nursing his injury, but wagging his tail whenever Ryan looked his way. The dog didn't hold grudges. He didn't flinch when Ryan moved. Why does he still trust me? Ryan asked suddenly. Walter chuckled. Dogs don't judge us for who we were. They believe in who we can be. Ryan looked at Buddy again, and for the first time, he felt something other than guilt. He felt responsibility. By the time they finished for the day, the fence stood firm, the backyard secure. Ryan wiped his hands on his jeans, stepping back to admire the work. Walter clapped him on the shoulder. You did good, kid. Daniel crossed his arms. See you tomorrow. Ryan blinked. Tomorrow? Daniel smirked. What, you think one good deed erases everything? There's still more work to do, but it's up to you. Ryan hesitated, then looked down at Buddy, who thumped his tail against the ground, looking up at him with hopeful eyes. For the first time, Ryan didn't feel the need to prove anything. He just nodded. "Yeah, I'll be here." A week had passed since that first night at Walter's house, and something had changed in Ryan. Every afternoon he showed up, sometimes reluctantly, but more often than not, with a quiet sense of purpose. He wasn't just fixing fences anymore. He was fixing something deeper. Walter had started to trust him, offering bits of advice between stories of his younger years. Buddy, despite everything, had fully accepted Ryan, wagging his tail excitedly whenever the boy arrived. One evening, as Ryan finished repainting part of the fence, Walter leaned forward in his rocking chair. "You remind me of myself when I was your age," he mused. Ryan scoffed. "Doubt it." Walter chuckled. "Oh, I was a real piece of work. Thought I knew everything. Thought being tough meant pushing people away. But life has a funny way of teaching you what really matters." He gestured toward Buddy. "This little guy taught me more about love and loyalty than most people ever did." Ryan looked down at Buddy, who was resting his head on his knee, completely at ease. It still baffled him how the dog had forgiven him so easily. Ryan hesitated before asking, "Do you think people can change?" Walter smiled. "Son, change isn't about one big moment. It's about the little choices you make every day." He patted Ryan's arm. "And you? You've been making the right ones." Ryan didn't know how to respond to that. A few weeks ago, he wouldn't have cared what anyone thought of him. Now, Walter's words meant something. Daniel, who had been watching from the porch, spoke up. "So, Ryan, what now?" Ryan furrowed his brow. "What do you mean?" Daniel leaned against the railing. "You came here because you had to, but now you have a choice. You can walk away, go back to your old life, or you can keep going, keep learning." Ryan looked around, the freshly painted fence, the sturdy gate, the small changes that made a big difference. Then he looked at Buddy. The dog lifted his head, his eyes filled with quiet trust. Ryan let out a slow breath. "I think I want to keep going." Walter grinned. "Good answer." Daniel nodded approvingly. "Then we'll see you tomorrow." As Ryan turned to leave, he felt lighter. The weight of guilt had been replaced with something new, something that felt a lot like purpose. For the first time in a long while, he knew exactly what kind of person he wanted to be. Ryan's story is a reminder that our actions define us, but they don't have to trap us. He started as someone who believed strength came from power over others. But through Buddy, Walter, and Daniel, he learned that true strength comes from kindness, accountability, and the willingness to change. At some point in our lives, we all face a choice. Do we continue down the same path, even when we know it's wrong? Or do we take responsibility and become better? Buddy, despite being hurt, never held a grudge. Dogs love unconditionally, and their loyalty teaches us an important lesson. Forgiveness is powerful, but so is making amends. Ryan had to earn back trust, and that's something we all have to do when we've made mistakes. In today's world, it's easy to dismiss our actions with, "It's not a big deal." Whether it's bullying, being unkind, or turning a blind eye to someone in need, the small choices we make every day shape who we become. Ryan learned that helping others wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of growth. Imagine if we all took the time to be a little more compassionate. The world doesn't need more cruelty. It needs more second chances. And maybe, just like Buddy, we can choose to trust in people's ability to change.